Hi, and welcome to Beyond the First Response. It's Christy Lister with my co-host, co-star, birthday twin by less than, well, a year and 2 days, Robyn Michael. And we have some special guests on, and I'm going to go ahead and let Robyn take it away.
Oh, wow. You just went right in there.
I did. You're welcome. You're younger. I can't remember things.
Oh, your A.R.P. card came already.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jess. Hi, Val. Today we have Val Groth. Did I pronounce that correctly? Groth?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. Valerie. Miss Valerie. From Stella Center, and Jess Anderson from my husband's department, the Alameda County Fire Department. And there is a very special reason we have them here together today, which we'll get into later. But Val, you're with a company called Stella Center, and I met you through Jess. Jess leads the peer support, or you lead or you co-lead the peer support team that has grown. Huh?
It's a group effort.
Yeah. You have really done amazing things with the peer support team since Eric's death, before that as well. But since Eric's death, you've definitely taken it to a whole nother level, which I could go on and on about how appreciative I am of that, and for always involving me in all of pretty much everything you do with that as well. You introduced me to Val for a very special reason, which I'm going to not take up too much time. And I didn't even do an icebreaker, which
I was wondering,
do you want to talk about like your favorite cereal, which way the toilet paper goes?
I'll do, because okay, I'm surprised you actually didn't throw that back on me. So thank you. I would have thrown it on. I do all the time, right? She's on top of it. So given the fact that, Val, you are not in California, correct?
I'm not in California. I was born in California.
Okay.
So I wish I was there all the time.
Right? My niece is there. I'm not. I'm in a cold place.
Same.
Yeah. I think we're in the same area.
Oh, okay. Where are you from?
I'm in Illinois.
I'm in Illinois. I'm in Chicago.
Okay. So I call it Jofield, Joliet, municipalities, Plainfield address.
Got it.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. So I would like to know how often, or if you guys think snow will occur in our beautiful Midwest area on Thanksgiving.
Well, two of the people here have no idea. Like, you're not.
That's why I'm getting them. That's why I'm like, are they going to pay attention to the weather? Do they pay attention to the news?
Well, I pay attention to Illinois weather, not my finger on the pulse, but my son lives in Champaign. He's going to the University of Illinois, and he graduates in 2 weeks.
Excellent. And what is he graduating in from?
He will have a degree in biology.
Excellent.
Oh, we talked about this. This is a son that's like a super genius, right?
He's an amazing human being. So that's well accomplished, but I think the best part is that he is a really good person. That's the part that I'm the most proud of.
So then let's see, Jess, will it be snowing here?
Well, as he says it, that just wait long enough and the weather will change. And I know it's been in the 30s. So I don't know for sure. I haven't paid that close of attention. I will be in the coming weeks, since we'll be flying out there in mid-December to see him walk. So I don't know. I'm going to say yes, it's going to snow.
I didn't actually look at the weather today. I did, but I wasn't listening.
I looked for me. I'm not sure what it's doing in Champaign. According to the weather on my phone, I don't think we're supposed to have snow, but I'd love to have snow on Thanksgiving.
We do a lot. Yeah, we do a lot. I'm surprised that we're not, given the fact that we've already had up to parts of Plainfield were 3.5, 4 inches.
Oh, last week. We didn't even we got a lot of flurries, but nothing that stuck.
Yeah. Well,
and Jess says 30s, man, it was like a negative. Well, the field was 5 degrees on Saturday. So
yeah, the wind chill is definitely a legit thing there, right?
Oh yeah. Especially in the city with the lakefront. I could not handle
and I'm
that.
right on the lake, so it's even colder than regular downtown Chicago.
So I'm coming to Robyn's for Thanksgiving, so I don't have to think about it.
Well, I'm going to be in Mount Shasta, so I'm going to be in similar situation, which I'm not weather-wise happy about.
Then at your house, it'll be like an Airbnb for me.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't snow because I refuse.
I'll join.
Snow.
Yeah, that would be my luck. It would snow.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Thanksgiving is a huge thing. Obviously, we're very thankful to have you guys on and to learn about. Robyn has kind of given me some touch base in what you do and what you've done. And I've been kind of researching it. And as Robyn continues, I will hop in with some questions because I was researching this morning. And I see that it's based out of Stella Center. Is that based out of Oak Brook, Illinois?
Kind of. So we were headquartered in Oak Brook. And if you want to call it Stella Center, you can. I know our marketing person would want me to say that it's Stella. I think we changed it. Stella, just Stella. Doesn't matter to me though. So we were headquartered here in Chicago. And we're going to be kind of building our flagship location here in Oak Brook, but we are growing pretty quickly. We've about 50 locations across the country, and we're also in Australia as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So how, Robyn, did you get to, obviously through Jess, but how did you get to know Val then?
Before I get into that, I want to put a disclaimer to our audience that Jess is at work. He is on duty, so he may have to go out at any moment. I'm not sure how busy your station is. Yeah. So how did we just decided to have a call and chat about what we both do, what I do on the First Help side, and how we can kind of partner with each other. We were introduced through Jess, through one of the meetings, and just an amazing, breakthrough. I don't know what the right word is, Jess, that you had with the shot. Of course, the name of it is, I know ganglion is in there. It's a very technical term. I'll get into that. But just the results that he had with it were truly life-changing. And he is very interested in just spreading the message that this works, PTSD treatment. So we are very hopeful for that. And even for those of us that aren't first responders, your focus right now is first responders, but for family members as well, someone like me that I do consider myself struggling a little bit with PTSD through Eric's death, obviously. And, previous anxiety issues and stuff, and how that can actually help with it as well. So with that, I'll let you.
So it's the stellate ganglion block, the SGB. You're welcome. Yeah, I pulled up my second screen.
Yeah.
But some stuff is so hard to use. But Jess, before you get called away, do you want to give us a little bit so that just in case you have to leave us and not get back in time?
Sure. I mean, I want Val to be able to kind of explain it so it will make a little bit more sense. But I will say, as a user and benefactor of it, as someone who has suffered from cumulative trauma, PTSD, I've gone through therapy, was diagnosed in 2019-ish, worked through a lot of things, kind of being able to put words to feelings to be able to understand kind of what it is, what my triggers are, things like that. So I was already on this mental health journey and journey of healing. And, part of that is also a lot of the work we're doing with the peer team and being of service and helping along those lines. So a friend of mine who's had a similar journey called me after he had the Stella treatment in Chicago. And he said it was just amazing, life-changing, I'm very familiar with his journey. So it was really kind of eye-opening. And then he put me in contact with Val. I ended up speaking with Val, and I was kind of on more of a research journey for what other treatments beyond talk therapy and counseling and other therapeutical, pharmaceutical, ketamine, things of the nature, just kind of have this multi-pronged approach to help people. So Stella was, in line with that. So through the conversation with Val, I was like very intrigued about what this could be. And for me, I don't like to take medication, either prescription or not. I just don't, that's not my thing. So I was never one to want to do pharmaceutical treatment, and even ketamine. I've had friends that have gone through ketamine treatment. It seems to help, but like once the drip stops, then the effect stops. Right. Where with the SGB treatment, it's really not that way. And I'll let Val speak to the technical portion of it. But for me, with PTSD, hypervigilance and kind of anxiety was a big portion of the symptoms that I was trying to cope with and deal with on a daily basis. It was kind of robbing me of kind of joy in life. So whether it's going to a movie theater or a baseball game or some kind of public forum, or going to the beach is a great example. Like when I would go to the beach, and I live in Southern California, so I'm very close to the beach, and that was definitely a happy place to go, but I was being robbed of that happiness because of the hypervigilance. So I would go to the beach and I would be scanning, looking, seeing people's behaviors, focusing kind of on the kids. Like, okay, I'm seeing these kids. Where are their parents? Are their parents paying attention? Are their parents engaged? Are they intoxicated? If something happens, who's going to be there to help? And I remember talking to my therapist about that, and she's like, yeah, that's not your job. That's what the lifeguards do. Like, stop it. So, but with that hypervigilance, it's really, really hard to turn off. So after the treatment, all of that kind of noise and static, as I call it, just went away. It was gone. The treatment is immediate. So immediately I felt a feeling of peace that I hadn't felt probably ever, at least not in my adult life that I can remember. And it's really helped me, kind of the way the Dr. Howe that did the procedure kind of explained it for me in my journey, that this is going to be kind of the icing on the cake. This is going to hopefully help you solidify your journey and continue on living a healthy, quote unquote, normal life, which as first responders, we don't really have a normal life, but normal for us. So I've been able to be a lot more present. So before, and kind of one of my first examples of, did this really work? A friend of mine is a Dodger fan, and I'm a huge Giants fan, so it's baseball teams. So he invited me to a Dodger game, and prior to the treatment, I would have been an anxious mess leading up to the game. How am I going to get there? What's traffic going to be like? Just all of these things that would cause anxiety for me that are completely outside of my control and really kind of keep you that wound up. And then very crowded, and for me as a Giants fan, a very hostile environment. I would have to get there and like have a couple of drinks or do something to kind of take the edge off so I would feel comfortable in my own skin. And then when I get there, after having a couple of drinks, then I'd be working on my exit strategy. Like, how am I going to get out of here? When can I leave? And I'm not able to enjoy the now and be present. And since the treatment, I will say I have really been able to be present and be more relaxed and be more what I felt in my core was myself, that I hadn't been able to be in a really, really long time.
When did you have your shot?
In July.
In July of this year.
Yes. So okay. It's been about 5 months.
5 months. And it's just one, and I know we'll get into that with Val, but do you have to have any follow? Obviously it's kind of, I'm assuming you're still going to be in talk therapy or speaking with a counselor, because that's still always going to be.
It's always helpful. I've kind of tapered off a little bit from doing the formal talk therapy with my therapist. I still have connections with her every now and then, kind of just check in. But I definitely have a good core group of people that I talk to, and it's a little bit different. I think I have healthier outlets. I have that daily practice that I know if I get away from, I can start to feel it, and I need to get back to that. And so I think all of those healthy coping mechanisms that I've been able to put into place have really been very helpful.
Well, I think that's something, because you said the healthy habits that you do every day, and you can feel when you get away with it. Prior to this treatment, you weren't able to even get into that spot, or if you were, you didn't necessarily see that you would get away from it.
Yes, I would say it was a little, I would be a little bit more extreme. Like if I got away from my daily practice, it would take me a lot longer to realize the negative effects of and refocusing and getting back into that daily practice. Where now between this, I think with this treatment, I'm not touting it as, oh, it did all these things for me, but it was able to kind of turn off the noise and allow me to really focus and be focused on myself. And being a person of service, it's been difficult because I've always kind of done on for others, so I wouldn't have to do for myself, and kind of put everybody else first, because it's that balance between, am I being selfish by taking the time to do what I need to do for myself? And then that comes to the phrase of, you can't pour from an empty vessel. So it's been accumulation of all of these things in a multi kind of faceted in my journey, that I feel that the SGB treatment, like Dr. Howe said, was like the icing on the cake for me, and was really able to allow me to have clarity and focus and be able to do what I need to do without feeling like I'm being selfish, if that makes sense.
Completely. And you shouldn't feel selfish, but I get that. Everything that you were saying, I'm like, oh God, that's not normal to sit there and wonder where those parents are.
Yeah, I know.
And why they're not doing that.
Right.
I always get told it's not your job. I'm like, but it's got to be somebody's job. And clearly the parents aren't there.
Right.
I immediately went back to times that we took vacations to Southern California at Santa Monica Beach and sitting there having conversations with Eric about it.
Yeah.
Exact scenario. That's crazy. Yeah.
I still follow those kids around the stores out of fear of this kid is wandering off by himself. Somebody's going to take him. Yeah.
I think some of that's just that protective instinct, but there's that breakover point when that hypervigilance is crippling. And as someone who commutes too, this was another thing. I fly on an airplane to come to work. So, there's 500 miles between where I live and where I work. And the reason for that is that we just wanted to live our dream now while we could. There's no guarantees, especially in my line of work. I wanted to not have somebody else living my dream. I wanted to be able to do that. But it comes with that longer commute, getting on the plane. Well, getting on the plane, even COVID was great, by the way, because that was like being on a charter plane. There was nobody on it. It was like being a rock star. It was nice. But prior to that, and prior to therapy, I was doing the same thing. I'm looking at the plane. I get on early. I'm seeing everybody walk past me. Who's going to cause trouble? Who's going to be helpful? How, and again, it's not my job. And it was hard to turn off. And then having anxiety attacks while you're on an airplane and 30,000 feet in the air, and this metal tube is not a comfortable thing. So being able to be mindful and be armed with certain things to be able to practice to get out of that mindset. It was very difficult and stressful, but I feel so much better with all the tools that I have now. So
good. Now, Val, is this a one-time shot, or is there follow-up shots that occur?
Yeah, good question. First of all, I just noticed you can see the heating pad I'm laying on for my bad back, so I'm sorry about that. Sorry. I hurt myself rock climbing. Second of all, in case you have to jump, Jess, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. I have had the pleasure of working with so many first responders in my role, and they're all amazing and have the hardest job in the world. But really just have to hand it to Jess, I think, for having just such an evidently massive heart for helping everyone around him and his community of first responders and the community at large. And really, I think just using your voice to talk about this issue of mental health in a way that not everyone is comfortable doing. And I know, we're just not there yet. Like, this is still a taboo topic to talk about mental health in the larger society, let alone, I think, in specific communities. And I just really commend you for that. So thank you for being here in case you have to hop up early. So to answer your question, Christy, so maybe should I back up a little bit and share kind of how it works? That's a great question.
Yes, please, because the ketamine treatments are something that I know a lot of people have tried or heard of. So when Robyn and I first talked about this, I'm like, but isn't that like the ketamine treatments? They really don't work. I have not heard that they've worked well in anybody. So yeah, please.
Yeah. And there's always so much to cover. So I'm probably only going to brush the surface. We can come back to what I skipped. So the stellate ganglion block, or SGB for short, came from the pain management world. And it's been done in that space for about 100+ years. About 20 or so years ago, a handful of clinicians, including our chief medical officer, Dr. Lipoff, realized there are really incredible implications for that procedure with slight alterations for trauma. And kind of how he stumbled upon that is his father was in World War II, had very significant PTSD, and his mother actually died by suicide because of that secondary PTSD. So when Dr. Lipoff stumbled upon this kind of the mental health and trauma benefits for this procedure, it was kind of fortuitous because he was so touched by mental health and kind of trauma and looking for that solution. So it's been, kind of, again, not new in the scheme of the world, but kind of newer in medicine in some ways. And then most folks don't know what this is outside of the pain management world, but the procedure itself kind of has been done in the pain space for a long time. So the stellate ganglion itself is a bundle of nerves on the left and right front sides of the neck, and that connects to the sympathetic nervous system where the fight or flight response happens. So what the procedure is we inject an anesthetic, which is FDA approved, the same thing used during epidurals during pregnancy every single day for women across America. And what that does is it kind of resets that sympathetic nervous system so that you're no longer going into that overactive fight or flight response. The term stellate ganglion block can feel like a little bit of a misnomer because it doesn't actually block you from how you're going to react. And so first responders and active duty military individuals often hear that and think, well, this numb my reaction time is actually the opposite. This actually has been shown to improve reaction time and to help you to stay calm and make better decisions in that moment. And, we were talking a little bit about kind of that hypervigilance. And I think and Jess, you could speak better to how this impacts you on a professional level than I could, but I've gotten SGB myself. And the way that I think about it is it can help with those racing thoughts and the paranoid thoughts. But what it really helps with, I think, is how it responds in your body and those visceral sensations. So you might still go to a beach and think, well, that kid doesn't have a parent. Where's that parent? But you're not flooded with emotion and you don't have that racing heart, kind of the panic attack feeling that comes over your body, allowing you then to kind of think through things more rationally in a cognitive fashion. So the procedure itself is really quick and it's outpatient. So you're only in the clinic for about 2 hours and the procedure itself takes 15 minutes. So you can drive yourself home. There's the option for either a local anesthetic, so you're awake the whole time, in which case you could drive yourself home, or a twilight sedation, which means you're not, kind of put under for about 10 minutes, and then you would need someone to bring you home. The only thing to expect after the procedure is what is called Horner syndrome, which sounds scary. Promise it's not. What that means is you might have a little bit of droopiness on kind of the eye area on the same side as the injection. That's expected. It means everything is working really well, and that goes away within a few hours, definitely by the next day. And you might have a little bit of hoarseness for a couple hours after. That goes away as well. So you can go back to work the next day. Unlike ketamine, you won't pop positive on a drug test because it's not psychoactive, won't change your brain chemistry. And I love how you said, Jess, that this kind of makes you feel like the best version of yourself, which is how I feel after SGB as well. It doesn't change your personality in any way, but makes you feel, I think, like the best version of who you are before all that trauma occurred in your life. And when we say this impacts trauma, I think we all have different definitions of what PTSD looks like, what trauma looks like. It can look like so many things, I think, to all of us, whether you are a first responder, if you are a combat veteran, or whether you've gone through sexual assault. Those are the things we often think about, but it can also be those more kind of innocuous small T traumas, I think, as well, around, living through COVID, having lost your job, been the victim of a toxic workplace environment. And it can also be traumas that happen recently or back in childhood. So we found this procedure works kind of regardless of when you experience trauma and whether it was one specific incident or whether it's a lot of things kind of in accumulation. So to answer your question, about 83% of people get the results they want after that first procedure. So what that looks like is, as Jess mentioned, feeling calm pretty immediately, and it kind of an alleviation of those physiological symptoms of trauma. So the hypervigilance, the racing heart, the insomnia, the irritability, that panic attack feeling. And about 10% come back and get a second procedure. So most folks just need that one, some do get a second one. And what's really incredible is this will last for a long time. And how long it does last depends a little bit on what you're doing. So like Jess mentioned, he's a great example of someone that had already been putting a lot of great habits in place, like you're going to therapy, you're doing the meditation, the yoga, all that good stuff. If you are using this as step one, kind of a reset, getting that foundational sense of calm and then doing the work, and you have those great habits, this will last for a very long time. But we very much do say it's not going to cure everything. If you are going back to a tough job or you are going back to a tough relationship, it won't fix those things. So that's why it can be really powerful to still go to therapy and make those behavioral changes.
Now, should people, if they're taking an antidepressant right now, are they able to do this and wean off the antidepressant, or because they're, in my mind, when I say, you don't always have to be on an antidepressant, you need it in order to work through, focus to work through what the trauma that you've gone through. And then you most likely will be able to get off of that. Is that something that you recommend that they are not on?
You do not have to go off medication in order to get SGB and qualify. We would never recommend anyone goes off it unless they talk to their doctor. I will say, kind of anecdotally, it is certainly common that a lot of folks do kind of cycle down or cycle off their psychotropics because they no longer have that same need. We also see a lot of individuals who no longer have that same kind of urge to use alcohol or drugs or even smoking as a result. But definitely again, talk to your doctor if you are on that medication.
Is there an age range? Because like Robyn and I, our kids have obviously had trauma due to the loss of their fathers. Is there a certain age that is appropriate to start?
Yeah, great question. This has been done as young as 9, and there's no cap on the upper end of things as well. I know we've got doctors across the country. Some of them have kind of an age limit, I think starting at like 16, and some doctors will do this on younger children as well. And that reminded me of something that's kind of a fun fact. We are very much focused on, of course, treating humans at Stella. So don't want this to get misconstrued, but SGB has been done on animals as well. So it has been done on dogs and actually lions with great outcomes. And what I think is really cool about that is it shows what we know now, that you can actually see trauma on a brain scan and it leaves this biological injury. And that really speaks to why in so many cases, therapy does not get the results we want, because it's just like going to physical therapy is only going to, work after you have the surgery and fix that broken leg or knee, right? So I think the fact that this has been done on animals is just kind of a cool, fun fact to show that trauma is trauma, right? It doesn't matter how it happened to you, or if you're a man or woman or what your age is, or even if you're an animal, we know that it has that same biological impact on the brain, which is fairly new in the scheme of brain science that we didn't realize.
Well, I think that's a good point. You showed that there's trauma in animals. It wasn't necessarily tested on animals, but
right.
yeah, because I just wanted to clear that. I'm like, well, she said that. I know it's coming next, but the benefits of what our humans, veterinarians can also take and utilize in animals. And that's what that was.
Yeah. And in terms of the outcomes that you kind of can sometimes expect from this. So the National Center for PTSD, says that if you have a 10-point drop in your symptoms from before to after, that's considered to be a huge, significant improvement to strive for. And our average drop is actually 29 points, so almost a 3-fold drop. And our average drop for first responders is actually 33 points. So it's pretty significant. We have individuals who come to us, had a formal PTSD diagnosis, didn't even qualify as having that on the back end because their symptoms essentially kind of went away. But also I should point out, you don't have to have a diagnosis to benefit. It's really more about the symptoms that you present with. So I don't need to have the PTSD or an anxiety diagnosis to benefit. And I myself do not have PTSD, but have suffered from anxiety my whole life. And it was a game changer for me.
And how long ago did you have yours?
In August, I think August of last year.
Okay. So how long has this been around then? Because since you guys are both newer, months out, sort of speak, of having your procedure done, how long have they been doing this for this purpose?
Well, so we have some patients that have never had to come back, and it's been 7 to 10 years.
Okay. So it's been 7 to 10 years since they started doing this, or since Stella Center came around?
Our chief medical officer has been doing this for, I believe, like 14 to 16 or so years.
So long enough.
As an official Stella as an organization. Yeah.
Okay. So long enough that it's been, as our listeners are hearing, I don't want people to sit here and think, oh, well, it's just one of those, let's just give it a try. It's new. Let's do it. It's been around. The success has been there. So the data shows that it is an effective way to help assist you through your trauma healing, so to speak.
Yeah. And I'm guessing most people listening to this will not have heard about it. And I don't know about you, Jess, when I first heard about this, it was 2020. I was running a nonprofit at the time, and one of my donors told me about this, and it was someone who I deeply trusted and respected. And when I learned about an injection in the neck, I thought he was off his rocker. I thought there's no way this is safe. And there's no way I would bring this to the students at my school. But the more I learned about it, the more I realized what a game-changing intervention this is. But I think it's not a household name yet. People don't know what this is. And that's what, I'm always thinking about, is how can we spread the word? Because I know that this will change lives and save lives for so many people. But worth noting, though, is there's a lot of traction in the veteran community. And there's actually an act called the Treat PTSD Act. And if that goes into law, which we hope that it will, that will actually cover this as a first-line treatment for all veterans in the country. And so that's backed by bipartisan congressmen, big organizations like Mission 22, AMVETS, American Legion. And I share all that to say, I think that's a really good sign that this is kind of moving in that direction. And once we hopefully have that happen in that space, it'll make things more accessible down the road for first responders and then civilians as well.
And I know the answer to this, but it's worth noting that insurance isn't quite covering this yet because of it not being really a household name. Is this FDA approved?
That's a tricky question. So let me give you kind of the full answer. What we inject, as I mentioned, is FDA approved. So the anesthetic is FDA approved completely. This procedure is not FDA approved for trauma, but there's two ways to look at that. One, there are a lot of other examples in medicine of things that we use every day safely that are not. One of the ones that comes to mind is baby aspirin. So we all know millions of doctors have prescribed baby aspirin to prevent heart attacks. It's not FDA approved for that purpose. So kind of thinking through, oh my gosh, I just totally lost my train of thought.
Welcome to our jungle.
I had 2 points. That was my first point. What was my second? Oh, my second point. Blooper reel. Second point being, oh goodness gracious, I happen to get you guys.
That's okay.
Well, and I'll say, like, the baby aspirin thing, I actually, besides heart attacks, I used that throughout my pregnancy with Donovan, because
Really?
I had a stillborn daughter before Donovan, and in doing the autopsy, they found that I had like one of the markers for lupus that causes blood clotting, that could have caused that. So I took a baby aspirin throughout my entire pregnancy to thin my blood, just in case it was a pregnancy induced thing. So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, that this is something that came out of something that was a treatment, like you said, for pain, for something completely different, that we happen to find out that it also helps other things.
Well, and I realized what I meant to say was there has not been, I was just reading this, I believe there has not been any new treatment approved for PTSD in about 20 years. So I think it kind of shows where we are in the mental health space, in the FDA.
I wanted to mention, like, how would you suggest, how do people find you? Like, does someone's therapist recommend you, or are they listening to the podcast and then they can just reach out to you? And, how do they get to you?
A great question. So we do have a network of therapists who do refer to us. But again, chances are, if you're listening, your therapist may or may not have actually heard about this. And my background, by the way, I am a trained therapist myself, and I hadn't heard about it until I was introduced a couple of years ago. So if you were a first responder, or if you love a first responder and you were their partner, the best way is actually to reach out to me personally, because we do sometimes have some opportunities to cover this for folks in the first responder community. And if I don't have that, I'd love to kind of help find a way of making that accessible, because like you mentioned, the insurance piece is not covered by insurance now, but we work with a lot of great organizations and nonprofits who want to help different communities. So if you want to email me, my information is valerie@stellacenter.com. But our website has great information too. I only mentioned that my email because then I can kind of support in terms of hopefully finding some funding. But our website is stellacenter.com, and there's great information about, SGB and how it works. There's a great white paper if anyone wants good, bedtime material. It'll put you to sleep, very tedious, but really, really good science at the same time around all of the great clinical studies that showcase, why this is a safe and effective procedure.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you weigh the good with the bad. If it doesn't work, okay, I don't think that that's going to be the case, but what's the worst thing that can happen? It's worth trying, It doesn't sound like there's any negative side effects. It seems like sticking a needle in your neck probably would be the worst, just getting past the mental.
It's fine.
So when I did it, I am kind of a wuss, and I got the twilight sedation. My husband got it, and he was awake and said it was a piece of cake. But he's a tough guy. He's had a lot of medical, surgeries himself. Jess, what was your experience like? Because you were awake. I mean, I thought it was easier than going to the dentist. Like, I was nervous about it. I mean, it could not have been easier, but you were awake. So what was your experience?
I was awake. This world, I'm kind of like morbidly curious anyway. So I wanted to know. And then the facility that I was at, Dr. Howe had multiple screens on the wall, depending on which direction you were looking. So you lay flat on your back. I had just the right side injection. So I look to my left and I'm looking at the flat screen TV. So he's got the Doppler on there because he's using the ultrasound to be able to find exactly where it is. And then I was able to watch the needle go in. I was able to watch when he gave the injection, because there's two separate needle injections that you do back to back. So wasn't bad. I mean, they put a local in there before. That's probably the only one that you really feel. And then after that, you're pretty numb and you don't see it. But I was able to watch the whole time. And then almost immediately after the second injection, just this overwhelming feeling of calm and peace that came over, and a little smile on your face that's you can't help but do. And then it just felt amazing.
So you had two injections?
No, it's a two.
It's a two-part.
Yeah, it's a two-part
injection.
Okay.
Different levels.
Yeah.
Well, if it's anything, out of curiosity, staying awake, it's really, if it's anything, I had some biopsy done on a nodule on my throat before. It's just after that initial local, you feel a little poking, but it doesn't hurt. Yeah, nothing at all. So I can imagine that's the same.
How do they choose what side you do? Or
I was going to ask that.
That's a really good question. So we always start on the right side. And I mentioned 83% of people, that's all they need. For some folks to come back for a second side, we would do a left typically. And this is not a black and white thing. So it does kind of depend on the individual. We have found in some cases, the left side can be helpful if you did have more childhood trauma. Which kind of manifests itself, I believe, on that left hemisphere. I'm not the doctor on our team, thankfully. So forgive me if I misspoke about that. But that's why we start on the right side, which speaks more to more recent adulthood trauma past the age of, I believe, 10. And the left side can be helpful for someone who experienced that early stage trauma. That's not always a connection, though, but that we've kind of noticed that connection.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
So out of curiosity, the right, like I'm left-handed, you would still start on the right side?
We would, yes.
Okay. Now I've gone through therapy. I know that I've had age 10 up trauma, but is there a way to know, or maybe it's after this and you start working more, sometimes, younger trauma, you're blocking out, much like other trauma, but especially from childhood. How are you going to know?
Yeah. And so that kind of one nice thing about this is we at Stella don't need to know what kind of trauma you had. And that's probably important to note, because I know for some folks that is just re-triggering to have to go through and talk about what they experienced. So when we have our patient care team working with patients to kind of schedule their intake and go through the assessments, we don't need to know what you experience. We are just looking at the symptoms. So what we would do is our team would meet with the individual after their first procedure, and they could do another symptom assessment. And based on that, we would decide if they do need a second. So it's less around, we won't ask, did you have childhood trauma, as much as if you are not getting the benefits after that first treatment, you probably are a good candidate to come back.
If I came in and I knew, and I'm just saying me as an example, I came in and I'm like, yes, I've had trauma. I was, early childhood trauma. Would you automatically just go to the left side then, or you stay on the right still?
No, we still start on the right. And in some cases that still might be all that you need. So it's, still kind of.
Just out of curiosity.
Right, that's great question though.
It's intriguing. And you guys do have a symptom quiz on your website. And what does that, I started looking, I would have to put my information in, obviously. I was going to try and go through it real quick. And I'm like, I got to put my information in. I don't have time. But what does that do for you and the treatment?
So we use what's called the PCL screener, and that is what the National Center for PTSD suggests for trauma symptoms. But we also use the GAD-7 in some cases, which is a screener for anxiety. So one, I guess, possible limitation of the PCL is the way the questions are written. It's very much assuming a trauma was a one-time thing. And for a lot of us, that's not the case. So the questions are kind of sometimes like, do you have nightmares about the event? Well, if it's, a lifetime of small T traumas, that might not be one thing. So we will sometimes use the GAD-7 to assess for anxiety symptoms, as well as a PCL-5 for trauma, if that makes sense.
It does. No, but you're initially going on and doing that. Then someone contacts you and has a conversation and debates or decides if they need to do the other one.
Yeah. So we have a team of mental health trained nurse practitioners that will help with that intake assessment. So they will help make the recommendation based on your symptoms, based on this assessment, based on everything we're talking about as a whole. Here's what I recommend, and if you're a good candidate or not. And we would never treat someone if they, for some reason, didn't have the symptoms or the assessment tools that qualify for that.
Now, I'm just curious, considering where this nerve bundle is, I'm thinking about whiplash, people that have had actual injuries. Is that another, do you see people come in that have started having anxiety issues, thinking that it's centered around some type of injury that they've had, the mental side of it, but it actually being a physical thing that happened to them? I know it's getting more into the science of it, but I'm just curious. It seems like I know our bodies are designed in a specific way, but to have something so important be so exposed right there, it's so interesting to me.
I think if I'm hearing you correctly, the question is, have we ever found someone that had mental health symptoms that actually came from a physical injury?
Yeah.
And that I'm not aware of. You did bring up a good point though, in terms of when you pointed this area, if you do have a metal plate in this area, that's often the only reason why we might not be able to treat someone, but it's also not a disqualifying factor. I mentioned my husband got it. He has a big metal plate in his neck from spine surgery, and he could still get it. So if you do have equipment in the wrong area, that would be one reason you wouldn't be able to get treatment. Other than that, there are very few reasons why you wouldn't be a good candidate. You have to go off blood thinners for a few days. You can't have this while you're pregnant, you have to wait until after the baby. But otherwise, there's very few reasons why someone wouldn't be a good candidate, which is not your question, but just bring that up.
No, I know that a lot of injuries like that the symptoms manifest as, PTSD from the accident, or I'm just thinking car accident or something.
I will also say this helps tremendously with TBI symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that it helps, and is actually the research shows that as soon as someone does sustain a TBI, the sooner they get this, the better their outcomes will be. And we know that if you get SGB and then later sustain another TBI, this can also help so those symptoms are minimized as well.
And what's TBI? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, a traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
Jess, how did the fire department, obviously you're very open about it publicly, which is a fantastic thing. Have they, did they question you on that, or I guess for lack of a better, I know here in Illinois, at least, especially in some of the police departments, they may look at it as an issue for them to be, fit for duty because they're going to do something like this.
With at least with the fire department physicals, it's not so much a fit for duty issue, and because it's not a psychotropic or anything that would pop positive on a drug test, it really wasn't anything that I was too concerned about. One of the things in the intake process, they did want me to meet with my primary doctor, which I did, and had a discussion with her, and she was not familiar with it either. So by the end of it, and really with my primary doctor, I hadn't really gone into a lot of my PTSD and other traumatic things. So that gave me an opportunity to talk to her about that and share what I was feeling in my journey and all of that stuff, which I think gave her a little bit more insight to some of the physical things I was dealing with too. But she was like, wow, this seems like, she's like, we're on a telehealth. She's like, oh, well, I want to know how this works. Let me know how it went. So I called her a couple of days after, and she was just blown away by how positive of an effect of that. As far as work goes, yeah, it has not been any issues with that, and I've been very open with my coworkers and the peer support team that I did do it, and I recommend it if you're willing to do it. That I think it really helps in that full multi-pronged approach of your mental health journey.
Val, how does that, speaking of, because he said he went to his general practitioner first, how does that look for HIPAA laws for you, for Stella Center? What is that for Stella? What does that do or not do?
So we have to abide by HIPAA compliant regulations. So we would never disclose any information about any of our patients for any reason to any external provider or source.
Good. And have you, police departments are so different than fire departments. Fire in many places are more open in seeking help and having conversations, where police are not. They fear often, I think, that they will be looked at as not being able to do their job, afraid they will not be able to still carry their weapon, their FOID card will be taken away. What are some things that we can assure them? And maybe Jess, you might be able to answer with this too. We can assure them that this is a safe, private way to get a procedure, to help along in their journey of healing. Oh my God.
No, it's
well, welcome to the police department. That about says it all.
It's really hard. I think I have a lot of law enforcement friends. I think a lot of the stuff that's different between the fire service and police service is there's a difference between living and working in these collective groups and driving around in a patrol car by yourself.
Right.
Sure. And that is the main difference. I mean, other than that, we're still here to serve and protect and be good servants to the community. But that difference of being in that car by yourself and having that alone time, and I think just adds to the stigma of not asking for help or not sharing your feelings and things like that. And I know a lot of police departments are very understaffed, working long hours. They're not being very proactive with policing. It's all reactive. You're going from call to call to call to call to call. And, it's highly, highly stressful, and you don't get that time immediately. This is more from the peer support world. You don't have that immediate time that we get on the fire engine. Like after a call on the fire engine, the 3 or 4 of us get back on the rig and we can immediately start to hot wash, talk about things, to kind of slough off some of the stuff. What went well, what went bad, what's out of our control. and be able to start that decompression right there. Where the police officers, it's, you know, 2 or 3 of them have to peel off and go to the next call. And then the investigating officer's still there. They're there by themselves. Maybe they're with the tech to be able to complete the investigation. They don't have that time to be able to do that and share their feelings. And then you go home and you're still isolated, or you don't want to do things. So it's very tricky to be able to do that. And the feeling of fit for duty and all of that's very real for police officers. And when this is not only your profession, but your livelihood, it's your identity. And when that gets stripped away, or the fear of that being stripped away, it's very real. So you're just going to put that armor on that much more and not talk about these things.
Right. And you stating about isolation, even when they go home, that is what Robyn and my goal is to help you understand that you're really not isolated. Your family is very supportive. We just need to be given the proper tools. And those tools vary from household to household. Do you find, since you've had this done, that you've been able to have, and obviously you've been doing a lot of work in general anyway, but have those open conversations knowing that your family is there to support you?
So I'm thrice married, which is not uncommon for my profession. I'm very fortunate now that my wife currently is very supportive. My previous 2 wives, I think it was a combination of me picking the wrong people, because I'm a rescuer, you know, I'm going to come and do all of that. And I think my second wife, we were both workaholics. She was in emergency services. She was an ER nurse. And the relationship kind of ran its course, and we drifted apart because we were both such hard chargers in our specific professions. So having a supportive household, you know, what spouse or even children, I think is really paramount to be able to feel that you can come home and do that. Like, my first wife was not in the business. Coming home, I had to really edit what I would say, because I didn't want to trigger her. I didn't want to, you know, upset her. Can
I ask a quick question on that? Were you afraid that was what's going to happen, or was it her personality in a sense that you knew that would happen? Because I think that's awfully times the assumption of that's what's going to happen. And I guarantee 9 times out of 10, it would not.
I think it was a combination of immaturity on my part. We were in our early 20s.
Okay.
And when I did share certain things, I got a response that I didn't necessarily like, without getting into any details. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't want that response when I'm trying to share something, so I just won't share it. And then you just become isolated. And in that instance, I was leaving for work early, coming home later, you know, just trying to avoid the interactions. And just keep it superficial, and that wasn't a healthy way of doing it either.
Right.
So I think with my growth and my experience and what I've learned third time around, and having an amazing partner that has also learned a lot through her journey in life, and she was a 911 dispatcher for nearly 20 years, so she has an understanding at least of the trauma and the job and things of that, and the inner workings and politics and administration and organizational abandonment issues and all of those things, that she's a good sounding board to be able to do that. And she's a very active listener, where my previous wives were not active listeners at all. They wanted, you know, to either just have the conversation stop, or just like offer a kind of a nonchalant solution to it of, oh, well, just don't worry about it, or, you know, that's not what I'm trying to get to share. So when you get that door slammed in your face so many times, whether it's from coworkers or the household, you're just I'm just gonna keep it to myself.
Yeah,
it's my issue.
Yeah, I'd like to think that we can not change people inside their homes, but I mean, like Christy said, we're trying to offer tools as spouses that have lost their first responders, you know, to suicide, and knowing that there was a lot of issues going on prior to that, years prior to that. But like you said, the immaturity plays a big factor in it too. I mean, not to get into too many details as well, but Eric and I were in our 20s when we got together. We were different people. And I don't know if hearing the stuff that Christy and I are trying to put out there now, if I would have taken it in, I don't know. But, you know, it doesn't stop us from trying, at least. But yeah, I mean, we try to impress upon spouses and family members that you have to be open to making a change in yourself and realizing where you're dropping the ball as well, if you want your family life to survive. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you.
I would say too, you know, being kind of an elder statesman in my profession, you know, I'm not old by human standards, but in this job I am, right? So seeing the different generations that we have, I will say this, and my son's 22, the resiliency of millennials and Generation Z is definitely there. I think they're able to talk about their feelings way more readily than my generation or previous generations. You know, before, like when I started, it was, you don't talk about it, or you use gallows humor, you know, go home, kick the dog and have another drink and just stuff it all down and get through it. Where having that more open conversation and being more open with your feelings like the younger generation is, I think that's a positive thing. So hopefully the newer generation entering this profession and their spouses will be more open to this type of thing and be able to share in a safe kind of environment. And so what I've definitely tried to do, even prior to the treatment, but through my journey and through peer support, is changing the conversation around the coffee table, and you're going to change the culture. So by being that elder statesman and having this kind of safe environment for people to be vulnerable or share my vulnerability myself and share my feelings and how I handled it wrong in the past and how I handle it today, I think it's really kind of opened people's eyes and is making that shift and that change.
Well, thank you for being open with your son about that, because I have a 23-year-old and we were not, and again, fire, police, a little bit different, but it wasn't until Ken died that I realized how we have to change our conversations with our kids and we have to be vulnerable. So by you doing that, you're already seeing that in your son, and that is fantastic. So that's kudos to you, because it's not just that generation, because they often, you know, still like to complain about things, but they're talking through them more.
Yeah. And I think we can talk about the generations and how we feel about them and what they're doing and all that stuff, but previous generations did the same thing about us too. So
exactly.
But I definitely see a difference and a change and yeah, they might whine and complain and play video games too much, but they are definitely more in tune with their feelings and being able to share and be able to say, hey, I don't like the way that, or call you out on it and say, when you said this is how it made me feel. And that was a conversation when I was in my 20s and never would have had that with anybody.
Right.
No, I wouldn't have even known to put those words together. This is how that made me feel. It was all about you pointing fingers. You did this, you messed up, you know? Yeah, the newer generation, definitely, I think, and maybe social media, the keyboard warrior side of it, maybe that is part of it. Maybe being able to have conversations without having the person in front of you does make you feel a little bit more empowered to speak your mind in a good way in some cases. So
Val, do you offer something for, well, anybody, but since we're talking first responders, so in a case like this, you know, Jess did this, if his kids are living at home and they're going to notice a change, but they're not going to understand it. Do you guys guide? Is there, I guess, a little set of therapy prior of what's going to change for you to help your family know that there will be a difference, and often in the positive way?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we do that to some degree now. What we are actually building out, that's going to be starting in the new year in January, is an optional kind of at the tail end after the treatment, some what we're calling jumpstart sessions with that nurse practitioner. And that's exactly what it's going to be all about, is how to now work well with your loved ones, how to make those behavioral changes now that you're more calm in your body. And some folks have their own therapists and won't want that, or we are going to be building that in if someone is interested.
And that part would be covered by insurance because that's not the procedure.
Yes and no. So for some people, it will be billable. It depends on your insurance, I believe. And I'm not
right for therapy. I mean, if you're covered for therapy, that would be covered in that same aspect, most likely.
So, yes.
Okay. Will you work with their therapist too? You guys sign the consent and work back and forth, so or is that not something in that jumpstart? I guess to make sure they both understand.
Yeah, we don't have to have a sign-on from a therapist in order for someone to get SGB, except in some cases. For example, if someone does have suicidal ideation, we would want to get sign off from their mental health provider before we give them treatment. And the reason for that is simply because, again, this is a game-changing, amazing treatment that has the ability to change someone's life, but it is not going to fix everything around you. So we want to make sure that person has a safe space to go back to after getting treatment. Otherwise, we do not need to share that information back and forth for HIPAA reasons.
And what if there's a minor coming? Like my daughter's 17. And if she decided that she's going to give you a call and she's going to do this, is it required because she's a minor that a parent be present or not just be the insured?
Yeah, we do need consent signed if they are underage.
Okay, good. Good. This is an amazing thing. And I'm looking, I see that it helps better sleep, less jumpy nerves, decreasing anxiety, ability to connect with others. Are you seeing, so Robyn mentioned lupus in her miscarriage. So I have lupus. Are you seeing, and you may not have even looked at things, but lupus obviously causes physical ailment, and it can also cause mental struggles because of everything not working properly, right? Not working the way we thought we would work. Are you seeing any changes health-wise in people if they have had lupus or other underlying autoimmune or diseases?
Yeah, sometimes. Although again, just kind of like with working with dogs, like we focus on the mental health side of things, and we don't ever want to market this as being for physical health, but that could be a happy byproduct. So it's definitely common that we hear people no longer have migraine headaches. They're definitely able to sleep better, which I think is kind of mentally and a physical aspect. And often some chronic pain can go away. So again, not going into it for that reason, you'd want to make sure you have those mental symptoms to qualify.
Right. And thank you for putting that, because that is what I mean, because, you mentally start, like the arthritis kicks in, or your joints are swollen. It's affecting you mentally. And often some of that pain is actually from the mental struggles and nothing else.
Yeah. It's a cycle for sure.
Yeah. So that's what I guess I love the way you worded it. So thank you. Is there a, if somebody goes on to take that symptom quiz, and then is there an answer right away? Like, does it give you, like the ACEs test, you're seeing your scoring? Is it where you're going to see your scoring right away, or you're not going to see it at all? It's going to be a call.
So we are actually changing our website. So it's possible I'm misspeaking here, but I believe what happens next is then someone from our team will reach out and they will schedule that more detailed intake conversation to kind of go over that symptom quiz with you. So instead of like your score is 45, it'll be like, we're going to set up a conversation and kind of get deeper into what your symptoms are and if you're a good candidate.
Okay, perfect. Robyn, do you have any other questions before we didn't take a commercial break? We were having such a great conversation. I don't think we need to. That's okay. No. We didn't need our coffee in the middle of it. So that's good for you guys. It says a lot for the conversation. No, I'm kidding. I was so intrigued. I'm like, I don't want to forget my thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had so many conversations with Jess and Val around all of this that, Christy, I wanted to let you answer or ask your questions because this is new for you. And I definitely I'm going to go online and take the quiz. I'm going to figure this out and get it done. Because I'm definitely intrigued by this and hopeful,
Right. Now, cost is out of pocket and is probably substantial in comparison to, an out of pocket for talk therapy. Do you guys have financing for that? What options so that people, because, you're worrying, you're like, this is what I need to do, but I don't have money. So I guess I'm never going to get better.
Yeah. So I will say, if anyone hears this podcast and they do reach out to me at that email I mentioned, Valerie@stellacenter.com, I can offer, we have partner rates for some of the first responders that we work with. And so we would waive some of like the extra costs for like the intake, et cetera. There is the option to pay spread over the course of a few months, and that's no interest, just a chance to make it more accessible over a longer period of time. I mentioned we do sometimes have nonprofits that we work with who can sponsor treatments for some individuals. If you're a first responder, for example, we sometimes have that. So we never want cost to be a barrier and a reason why someone can't get it. I will say, the price point at $1,550 is more than a therapy session, but I can tell you in terms of my life personally, I think when I was someone struggling with anxiety, I was going to acupuncture twice a month, which was like $140 a pop, and my acupuncturist told me to try edibles to sleep better and, spending money on all of those things and CBD oil and massages. And I was spending a lot of money trying to help my anxiety in a way that was not moving the needle, and that I had to keep spending over and over and over. So I know for me, like this felt like, a drop in the bucket when compared to all the ways that I was supporting my anxiety in other ways.
And $1,550 really is not a lot. You're right. Is that for everything? Intake, everything?
For our first responders, yes.
Okay. Right. And would their families qualify under that as well? Not just the first responder themselves, but their families as well?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's if you are a family member, you don't necessarily have to tell your first responder, hey, I'm calling and getting this done for myself. You can do that and still contact you via your email. Perfect. What's the, and well, I guess that's really, that covers that. I was going to say, what's the qualifications, but we just discussed that. So see.
But if anyone does have any more questions in general, they're welcome to email me. I'm happy to get on a call with anyone to talk about, if they have any questions they have, if they have questions about how to bring this to their community, because that's really the larger goal, is how can we bring this to police departments, to fire departments, to get the government involved and find big grants so that we can make this really accessible at scale, at some point. So
and you need people to reach out to you and have the procedure done so that you have the data to back it up, right? To bring to legislation.
Yes and no. The more the better, but we do have some things happening. We've got some folks in Indiana who are trying to pass legislation to get this covered for workers' comp. Jess and I had a call with someone yesterday in California who's interested in the same thing. So I think we'll move kind of on the state level a little bit sooner. In terms of getting something through Congress, it's probably a longer process.
Yeah.
But the fact that we've seen, and it's not, like you said, I'm just going to kind of reiterate, it's been around for at least 14 years. You've seen the positive. 83% do not have to come back a second time as of right now. And we're looking, even those that were 10, 12 years ago, they have never had to come back for a second one if they have not been re-engaged in any trauma.
Yeah,
right?
That's a fair way to look at it. The reality is, if you do go through a really tough time and a trauma, this might not last forever. You might have to come back. But again, if we're doing the work and going to therapy and making those kind of like daily behavioral changes, it's going to stick and have pretty long lasting.
Well, and that's the important thing, because anything that takes time from healing from, it's not a one-time miracle. You have to partner it like you do with antidepressants or other medications. You're partnering it with counseling or other sources of rebuilding your toolbox so that you are more resilient. And once you're able to do that and you're in a better mindset to do that, that resiliency stays with you longer and makes that trauma, when re-engaged in trauma, so much easier to get through. That often debriefing yourself with somebody allows you to be done with dealing with that trauma and letting it go.
Yeah. And when I say therapy, to me, that's a catch-all that I think can include peer support. I know that's a big that's doing day in and day out. And that in combination with SGB, I think is a powerful.
Yeah. As long as because it's therapy. As long as you talk to somebody and not talk at somebody, but get it off your chest. Talking to yourself doesn't count. I've tried. You start answering and you don't like those answers either. So just kidding. But it's important. And it helps you open up and grow and heal. So this is fantastic. It is definitely an option that I may even consider because there's a lot and it's probably time, but I would never have done the ketamine. I don't, that is not something. And I know that you guys offer that as well. You have the SGB, the ketamine, and talk therapy. So there are options that if you feel one doesn't work for you, Stella Center or Stella, going to stellacenter.com, is what I meant to say, has those options for you. Now, I know you said, why don't we go ahead and let everybody know kind of where, because you may have to travel. If this is something you want to do, that travel cost is not going to be covered under that first responder discount, correct?
That is correct, but there are a couple of nonprofits that I know will sometimes support with travel. So again, if someone wants to email me, I can share more information. There's one that will support with veteran travel, and one will sometimes support with first responder travel. I think they might ask for proof of financial need for that, but again, I hate for that to be a barrier for someone to get treatment. So if they're interested, and that's the one thing in the way, have them reach out to me.
Great. So you're in Illinois, you're in Australia, you're in California.
Oh, all over the place. No, we're all over the state.
So you can just go onto the website and put in Stella near me.
Yeah, it will for all of our locations. Yeah.
Perfect. And Jess, thank you for being so open and honest with us and having the conversation. It shows the vulnerability can make a difference. And it's a strength that so many don't realize is. So thank you very much for that. And Val, I'm going to be in contact with you. So I look forward to learning more about that and understanding it so that we can help others as well, because we need to have these options for people, because not everything works for everybody and not everybody's educated on what works for them. So it's just one more thing to add that they can find and try in hopes that it will help them or somebody that they know and love. So thank you very much for your time, both of you. And look, Jess, you got to stay on. No calls happened. It's the quietest.
Right? Oh, don't say the Q word.
Oh, well, it was a moment to take a breath.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So it worked out perfectly.
It did.
And then everybody stay safe and enjoy your Thanksgiving. And we look forward to learning more and seeing how it works for us. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. All of this will be on our YouTube recording, and we'll have our show notes where we'll be able to have this in our blog too, with the contacts and the website links. So thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.